major announcement about the 2016 presidential election from former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. Moments ago, he went on the record. Nice to see you, sir.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Always nice to see you. All right. Have you decided who you are going to support for president?
Yes. And the way I think of it is this. On the Democrat side, we have a known known. On the Republican side, we have a recent entry who's a known unknown.
Isn't that the title of a book?
It is. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I have a good memory.
But look, I'm a Republican. I don't expect that I should agree with everybody on everything. With two great political parties, there's bound to be a range of views, and I could not vote for Mrs. Clinton.
All right. Are you endorsing Trump or supporting him, voting for him?
I don't know that there's any difference.
So this is an endorsement?
No, I don't. No one asked me for my endorsement, but I'm clearly going to vote for him. I mean, I just can't imagine not.
In terms of Secretary Clinton, why is it that you wouldn't vote for her?
Well, there are a number of reasons. I think telling the parents of people who've been killed that it was a result of a video when she knew it was not is not a good thing to do. I think even worse is if you think of intelligence, you've got official business, sensitive, confidential, secret, and top secret. And then you've got compartments where even someone cleared for top secret is not allowed access to those compartments unless they have a need to know. From everything you read in the paper, she was on that server, had special compartmented information and top secret information. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, number one, the information, we spend billions of dollars gathering intelligence as a country. And once people outside know that we have that intelligence, they then can prevent us from getting additional intelligence through that source. And that puts the source at risk. Second, any country looking at the way the State Department and she handled classified information is not going to want to put their people at risk. So they're going to refuse to give us information. And I've been told this by one country already, that they would have to be much more careful about what they would share with us. Well, we don't know everything. We have to cooperate with other intelligence agencies. And so I really believe that if she were a yeoman in the Navy or a sergeant in the Army or the Marine Corps or the Air Force, that she'd be prosecuted. I don't know what will happen, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think that the idea that when people say to her, well, who has the responsibility for classifying a document? And she says the State Department, as though a building is the one that has hands and can say secret or top secret or special compartmented information. I think it's a serious offense.
Well, it seems to me, listen to you, that it's that your vote is in part it's anybody but, because you don't want her.
Well, that's true in life.
Well, no, but
every time I vote, we're not voting against this person against the good Lord.
Well,
we're voting between two people.
But you're taking the unknown because the one you know is one that
is unacceptable.
Right. So you're just going to, not that you have a lot of options at this point. There is only one other candidate, right, unless you went libertarian. So you're going to take him. Now,
I also have another reason,
okay,
and that's that I think that Sanders and Trump have hit a nerve in this country. And people in public life or private life or your business need to not be dismissive of that. There's something happening that those two people could draw 25,000 human beings to hear them speak. And I think that we ought to give some credence to that and understand that that's real.
What about the fact that Donald Trump has ruffled the feathers of some of our allies? You've got Prime Minister Cameron has said things. I mean, what does that unnerve you a little bit as you make your selection?
Well, I just spent 8 days in the Caucasus and Central Asia area and talked to a lot of people from other countries. They know I'm a former ambassador to NATO, and they know what Mr. Trump is being reported as having said about NATO. And I had a staff person go back and tell me precisely what he did say about NATO. And then I compared it with what the media and his opponents are saying he said about NATO, and there's a difference. And I laughed because back in 2003 or 4 or 5, I sent President Bush, it's on RUMSFELD.com, my website, a memo saying that NATO needs to be all these institutions that were created back in the Truman era, UN, NATO, the Department of Defense, the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Council, they all need to be updated. They were created at the end of World War II, at the beginning of the Cold War. We ended the Cold War and moved into the information age in the 21st century, and they've not been looked at to be brought up to date to deal with threats and issues and needs that exist today. Even though they've served us well over the years, I do think that we need like a Hoover Commission, a group of people that sit down and really look at those things. The other thing is, he said about NATO that the Western European allies aren't spending enough on defense. Well, it happens to be true. When I came here, the United States was spending 10% of GDP on defense in 1957 in the Eisenhower, the Kennedy, the Johnson era. Today, we're spending less than 4%. And our allies are spending less than 2%. Now, we're not going to preserve peace if we don't make the kinds of investments in our security that are needed.
All right. This week, CIA Director Brennan said that ISIS is getting bigger, that it's a growing threat. Who could destroy ISIS better, Trump or Clinton?
Well, I think the idea of 4 more years of what we've had over the past 7 or 8 is not going to do it. I was just with a very prominent Central European figure in office, and it was in a private session, so it's not for me to say who it was. But they were asked, if you had an opportunity to give advice to the President of the United States or the incoming President of the United States, what would your advice be? And the person answered and said, act like a superpower. What's happened is we have created a vacuum in the world so that all eyes are turning away from us. And the expectations have dropped. And our friends are less certain of our friendship. And our enemies are of a mind that they can do more. Someone asked me, what will Mr. Putin do next? And I said, whatever he thinks he can. That's what he'll do. People don't do things they think they can't do, but he feels free.
Let me turn now to the thing that you and I have talked about before, your solitaire game. You can now get it on an Android.
It is true. It's been on the Apple App Store, and now it is on Android, which is a large market, and it's been fun. We had something like 600,000 downloads.
650,000.
Is that right?
650,000. I looked it up.
Oh, my goodness. And it was ranked one of the top ones in the first weeks it was out. It's a terrific game. And
Churchill really played it during World War II?
Churchill played it a lot during World War II, and he ended up teaching a man named Andre de Stark back in when the Germans, Nazis occupied Belgium. He went in exile, in government in exile in London, and became a good friend of Churchill's. Churchill taught him. He taught me 30 or 40 years later when I was ambassador to NATO. And Joyce and I have been playing it, and we've taught it to some friends. I was afraid it would be lost to the ages, but I have no doubt that you could win. You could do well.
Well, and the proceeds help vets, injured vets?
Right. Any proceeds I make are going to military charities that our foundation support, and the money that the Churchill people make goes to the Churchill legacy. They've been very cooperative, and we've enjoyed doing it. But it's a challenging game. It's strategic. It's vastly more difficult because it involves 2 sets of cards. Yeah. And other complications. But it's a lot of fun. You start out as a Sandhurst cadet, as Churchill did, and then you move up to Prime Minister. And
for everyone out there watching, download this app. You can now get it on Androids. Secretary Rumsfeld, always nice to see you, sir.
Thank you, Greta. Good to be with you.
You can learn about the Churchill Solitaire. In case you weren't listening, go to GretaWire.com, and on my Facebook page, there's a link to download the app, a tutorial on how to play. You can't miss it.